Hi everyone, welcome to TriEssence martial art channel, second episode of internal in a nutshell. So in our last video, we basically shown you guys one simple way to test if you have internal understanding or if you are in fact training internal. And of course, you can also use that to test your teacher to see if he actually knows internal and is qualified enough to teach you internal mechanics or not. In this video, we are going to build a little bit more on top of the same topic and talk about how to spot bad Xingyi. Now, before we go any further, I'd like to clarify that I don't do Xingyi. Okay, I've said this many times in my videos, but in case this is the first video you see in my channel, I don't do Xingyi. And I don't represent Xingyi practitioners. However, I do know a lot of Xingyi friends, whether it's from the Hebei lineage in Beijing, whether it's the Song lineage from Shanxi, Che lineage. I know quite a lot of Xingyi practitioners. I even know a good friend from the Zhang Zhandong lineage from Tianjin, for example. So the point is, I've seen enough Xingyi to have my own understanding of it. So even though I don't practice it, but I do know about it. And secondly, the four fundamental forces of internal is shared across all internal stuff. So you don't have to do Xingyi to be able to see the same mechanic being used in Xingyi. So even though I don't practice Xingyi, I can see if a Xingyi practitioner has these four fundamental principles or not. And today, we're going to look at the exact same principle as last time, which is the opening of shoulder. Without further ado, let's first watch the video in question.
People ask me about how to practice 5 elements with single arm or single hands. Today, I would like to talk about this. So for the first one, which is the metal OP, you can practice just like upward, downward, upward, downward. 2. For the second one, which is the bone or wood, what you can practice it only like forward, upward. Then for the third movement, which is the water, or we say the zuan, you can practice upward with the elbow. So like, for number 4, which is the power or fire, then what you can do is use a crossing stance, and then just forward. The last one, which is hung or earth, there are 2 methods. The first one you can practice just like. Another way is releasing or external outward releasing. So you move. The key of the 5 element single hand practice is to focus on the body, to generate the force and the power through the body motion. It's not only focus on the arm. The body is the key, not the arm.
Alright, so this is the video we're going to talk about today. And before anyone jump out of the chair and start shouting that this guy is famous and really good master, I would just like to remind you that in this channel, we don't care about how famous the person is, what reputation the person is, or what the community think how good he is. Here we are here to only look at hard, cold facts. Alright? The reputation and what other people think about him doesn't necessarily represent the truth. I would just like to say this, is that I do know of this person and some of his background. For example, how he badmouthed someone else's school, the people went to challenge him, slap him in the face, and then he wanted to call the police. I also happen to know that when he went back to China, a Beijing martial artist called Li Jinghua actually went and challenged him, and he dodged the challenge, right? So before you running around saying I don't know what I'm talking about, I do know a fair amount of this person's background to know that he is not a very respectable fighter within the Chinese martial community. Alright? I do know that he's famous in certain areas and communities. A lot of people think he is the bomb, but I don't think so. However, this video is not about my opinion of him or your opinion of him. We're here to examine facts. Okay? So let's start with that. The first issue I have with this kind of video is that it is stupid. Okay? And why do I say that? Single hand doing Xingyi Fajin. WTF, man. What the hell, right? Like why would you ever want that? Why would you want to train Xingyi with single hand? If you have 2 hands, if you only got 1 hand, well, maybe don't do Xingyi, right? Do something else. But if you have both hands, Why only use one? So the entire premise of this video is already quite stupid, right?
Well, I've never heard of it before. So I mean the one-hand training. So kudos.
Yeah, so it's almost like what's he trying to show or prove? I don't know. It's really stupid. Anyway, but that's not the point. The point is, someone posted this video claiming that this shows very good body mechanic and hip and pelvis power transferring to the punches, and I completely cannot see that at all. No matter who it is, if somebody does Xingyi this way, with one hand or two hands, it doesn't matter. It is simply bad Xingyi. And here we're going to tell you exactly why. So firstly, he shows a single hand Qi Quan, which looks like this.
Upward, downward, upward, downward. Two.
So the first problem that really immediately jumped out to me is his elbow alignment. He's essentially throwing a punch like this. Although he makes a lot of sound, which I'm not sure is from the position of his mic, the fluffiness of his clothing, or he's stomping the wooden floor of his house, which is hollow and making the sound. But that sound does not come from his fist breaking through it. Right? That's not what it is. So don't be fooled by that sound. And secondly, although it looks like he's punching very hard, he's essentially only punching with this part of the body. The rest of the body is not involved. I know this is very hard to see if you don't actually have enough understanding on internal martial art and its mechanics. If you're untrained, you can't spot that. You kind of have to be able to do it yourself to be able to see someone else has it. So we're not going to dwell too much on this, but just remember that he's only using very local force. His body isn't incorporated into this whole motion. However, there's another way that's much easier to look at the whole thing, which is very simply to examine his structure. Now, according to Xingyi manuscript, it is said that 肘不离肋. What that means? It means the elbow does not leave the rib. Okay, and that's a very important thing in Xingyi. Now, if you see in his video, initially his elbow does kind of come close to the ribs, but the moment he starts punching, it leaves the ribs, and in the final state of his punch, his elbow is kind of sticking out, right? So it looks something like this.
Upward, downward, upward, downward. Two.
Like he has the other hand behind him, almost like Huang Fei Hong from Once Upon a Time in China. I don't know why. Maybe he's trying to be cool, maybe trying to be, different to everybody else, but it's kind of stupid. Anyway, so his elbow is over here. And why is this bad? No matter how much power it looks like he's generating, why is this bad? Quite simply, if you stand like this, and you ask somebody to push against your fist, use small motion, right?
Yeah.
And you immediately push, you immediately feel that it's much harder to resist somebody, right? Even if you do, obviously you might think, okay, both hands is too much, let's do one hand. And still, right, even if you ask him to just slowly increase the force, not by a lot, you will feel that it's a lot of stress and the elbow is not committing the force into the rest of your body, it's sticking out, and that actually collapses your structure. Now you might think, why is it important to let somebody push your punch? Right? I'm just punching someone, I'm not letting him pushing me, I'm not trying to have a tug of war. Why is this important? Well, quite simply, how an incoming force is received in your body, exactly how your force will come out to his body. Okay? So if you want to use the rest of your body, your spine, your hip, your waist, your leg, your pelvic, to accelerate the power on your fist, then that whole structure needs to be connected. If his incoming force isn't directed into your feet, then the force coming from your feet isn't going to come out onto his body. It's as simple as that, right? So the body connection is like a road or a straw. It goes both ways. You can't just go this way but not the other way. So by allowing somebody to push you, you examine how well you are connected to the ground on your own body structure. So what's the correct way of doing it? Quite simply, 肘不离肋, right? When you punch, the elbow is next to your ribs. Even when you come in the front, it's still in, right? I mean, it can't be like this. At the moment you are here and suddenly pushing, then you will feel that the force is coming directly into the rest of your body, right? So even if you push really hard, you might get pushed back, but it's your whole body that's pulling back. It's not over here where it is like your whole body kind of skews off. what do you feel the difference between the elbow sticking out and elbows coming in?
Coming in is obviously a lot
More stable.
harder. Yeah, it's like pushing against a wall, basically.
And it's simple physics, right? It's just the integrity of the structure. There's nothing mystical about it. If everything is aligned, better structure. If it's not aligned, bad structure. It's simple as that.
Well, look, I mean, EFIS, they do,
Yes, EFIS, but
elbow
that's
arch, but
it's a different
mechanic.
Yeah, it's a different mechanic. Yeah.
So when we're talking about, Xingyi, right?
Xingyi,
Xingyi, right? Xingyi first, right? If you're practicing Xingyi,
Practice Xingyi.
yeah, if you practice Xingyi, right? The style, there's a reason why the elbow is in.
Exactly, right? Don't confuse it with other stuff.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. So
They're not exactly the same. They have the same fundamental mechanic, but they're not the same application or how they make use of the mechanic.
exactly. Because I think somebody might just argue
Yes.
that but other style does
Yeah,
it and
yeah.
whatnot and why not. So that's why just to emphasize that each style has different methods of
Yes, and just for curiosity's
keeping the
sake.
integrity.
So this is 专拳 from Xingyi, right? Where the elbow is in. If you look at 一拳 专拳, they start off here. See, the elbow is still in. 一拳 doesn't 专拳 like this. They might do other punches like this, 摘拳, but the 专拳, the elbow comes in like this. So you can see that even though the structure is like this punch, the elbow have to come in. So the fact that this guy's elbow sticking out, really weird, it doesn't make sense, no matter how famous he is, this is wrong. And it's quite simply proven by simple physics. Right? You can't argue physics. No matter how famous he is, he can't defy physics unless he's not from this world. But I'm pretty sure he is. So there's no room to argument in this one. And the second one, where he does this, and then he does P jump. So obviously P jump is a confusing subject. There are people who would think it's a straight hand. There are people who actually think it's a downward strike. And there are people who think it's an arching that goes up and then goes down and forward at the same time. So different lineages of Xingyi have different interpretation on the trajectory of P jump. Again, that's not important here. I'm just pointing out so you know that there isn't just one universal understanding to P Quan. However, again, you don't do P Quan with the elbow sticking. It's not like this. Okay, but when you're doing this, you only use the local side of your body to generate power, and that's not what you want to do in any internal stuff. And again, if you to just simply test this, that somebody pushes you. If you stand like this and resist, then if you stand like this and resist, you can see that the moment my elbow comes in, my whole spine can then push against it. But if I'm like that, then my spine can push, but it's getting broken by this elbow going that way. So again, the same thing as the previous one. It's just simple structured fault. There's a fault in the structure, and that is basically preventing anyone from doing this to be able to take the entire body force into a strike. Which is why in the manuscript of Xingyi it specifically says 肘不离类, right? People don't write those things for nothing. One common problem with modern people is they think, yeah, old people wrote that script. We don't have to fully buy into it. It's just an approximation. Well, if you're talking about some of the more crazy stuff, maybe you shouldn't take it word for word. For example, like in Tai Chi Master, we talk about, you cannot add a feather to someone, and even the fly cannot land on someone. Those is probably elaboration or exaggeration of what they're talking about. But what I say is, your elbow can't leave your rib. It literally means that your elbow can't leave your rib. And when you leave your rib, it breaks the fundamental structure of that style, and you're no longer doing that style effectively. And the next one we're going to talk about is 崩拳.
Forward, one more.
Again, in his 崩拳, you can see quite clearly that his elbow, it's a little better than the previous one, but it's still kind of sticking out. It's not aligned to the body. And furthermore, he's just throwing the punch from this motion, right? His body kind of helps a bit, but it's mostly just here. It's like he's punching through first forearm and the arm and the shoulder just like that. And again, if you were to do the same test, if you have somebody push on you, then you'll see that if your elbow is sticking out, bad structure, sticking in, far better structure. So that's everybody should know this by now. And secondly, another way to test 崩拳, you have somebody weight downwards. Okay. And why is that important? Because in the story of Guo Yunshen, it says that he does崩拳to people, and everyone always try to hit it downwards. And when they do, they bounce back up. What that means is that maybe the bouncing back up is exaggerated. We're not 100% sure, although I don't think it is exaggerated. But that's for another time. But what this shows is that he's able to resist a downwards force with a linear punch. Okay, so which is why it's a good way to test your structure integrity. And if you hold your elbow here and you let somebody weight downwards, you'll see that it's almost impossible to withstand that force. It breaks your shoulder, and it's going out, not into your body, so the rest of your body can't actually help. It just strains your shoulder, and of course your shoulder is a weak joint, and therefore it wouldn't work. So how do you resist a downwards force with Bengquan? Quite simply, if you align your elbow from your rib to the center line, you extend your shoulder, relax the shoulder blade, tuck in your tailbone, and you bend to the rest of the body, then as you apply force, you can see the rest of the body can weigh in. Although you can't resist infinite amount of force, but this you can really feel as a far superior structure. When he's doing that, you can kind of still resist compared to if you're like that. Unless you kind of do this, right? Otherwise you can't overcome that force. So this is what is wrong with his Bengquan. And of course, in internal martial arts, you want to punch with your body. If you're throwing this arm like this,
forward, upward.
the rest of the body is not helping. Now I don't do Bengquan, but I do a similar punch called mid punch from Wuxing Tongbei. Although it's not the exact same punch, it's very similar fashion. And you can see from Dongquan that the arm is not what generating the power. Instead, see, it's the body that generates the power. The arm sort of just follows. And that also correlates with the Xingyi manuscript that says, the body accelerates the elbow, and the elbow accelerates the foot, or the shoulder accelerates the elbow, elbow accelerates the foot. So you can see that it is driven from the root of your body to the tip. It's not a motion that you punch somebody like that. It's driven from the core into the fist. And that is not being shown here, which is another red flag on this particular person's Xingyi. And next, then we get to Pao Quan, which he demonstrated with other hands. Which is pretty much the same thing. His elbow is not really aligned, and also he's really punching hard with the shoulder. He's really trying really hard to be impressive, to punch hard. But in doing so, for someone who's actually well trained, you can see that his body is not the driving factor, and it's not actually involved in sending the arm forward. Instead, he's just punching with his arm. And in any internal style, you don't want to be an arm puncher. An arm puncher defeats the point of internal style. And lastly, a Heng Quan. This one is completely pointless, right? What other one, you can argue that, Zuan Quan, Xi Quan, although it's very awkward, but you maybe can do it with one hand. Heng Quan you simply can't do with one hand because you kind of need this hand to kind of balance this out. That's what this hand is here, and then it goes. So that opposing pulling force is what drives Heng Quan. It's the mechanic behind Heng Quan. So if you just do it with one hand, you literally are missing half the mechanic, and the whole part cannot exist. The proper mechanic doesn't exist, and therefore it is a waste of time. And which is why in his example, you can see that he's essentially just doing this with this part of the arm. The rest of the body is not involved. So what can this tell? Nothing, right? It's completely pointless. And by now you might start to wonder how this is all connected to our first video about opening up the shoulder. Right? Quite simply, if your shoulder is not open, and you happen to look like this guy, which is having like a broad chest, then it's very hard for your elbow to come into the center line because he's too stuffy and it's too wide. Therefore, every time, I'm exaggerating a bit, but the idea is that that's why every time he's punching, elbow is there. You kind of have to concave your chest and bulge your back, right? 含胸拔背, a common quality of all internal martial art, in order to have this elbow come into the center line. And even if you are not as skinny as me and then can't have this elbow directly in the center line, it should come pretty close. It cannot stick out, okay? And when I'm doing this, then it requires a degree of flexibility on the shoulders, otherwise you will look like this, okay? If my chest is completely flat, it will be here. Only when you can hollow your chest and bulge your back and open your shoulder, are you able to have your elbow, you see, like this, or like this in the right place. So this is why, even though this guy didn't do the test that we saw last time about resisting the force, from just the way he does his 5 elemental first, I can still see that his shoulders are not open. And just like the last video, if your shoulders are not open, then you haven't even reached the door frame of internal. Never mind being a practitioner or a master in internal Chinese martial arts. Anyone add?
Well, disclaimer, trigger warning. I think he's surrounded by the seeker.
What the hell? Where did that come from?
Just say. Yeah, well, you talk about his chest, right?
Yeah, I don't wanna go. I don't wanna think about that. So thank you. It'll give me nightmares.
Just say it.
But yeah, so remember, you can't open your shoulder blades, you can't keep your chest, bulge your back, then you don't have internal mechanics. No matter how famous you are, how impressive you punch my look, it's not the same. And when in doubt, always test any internal quality by applying a force and see how the body's structure absorbs that force. And when you do so, you feel a stress in your shoulder, or don't you? Even if you are resisting a force, if you feel severe stress in your shoulder, chances are you're not doing it right. And you're only able to resist because you are stronger than that guy. But the moment someone is stronger than you, the shoulder stress is going to collapse. So you have to be in a position where the shoulder doesn't feel the stress at all in order for you to know that you are now in the correct structure. So that's pretty much a very simple way to test any internal motion, posture, or structural move. Okay? I hope that has made sense. If you have any particular questions regarding this, you feel free to message me, and then I'll try to answer them for you, or maybe include them in the next video. If you find this video interesting, then subscribe to my YouTube channel, click on the bell icon so you can get updated whenever I upload the new content. And if you can support me on Patreon, that would be greatly appreciated. As always, a shout out to all my Patreon supporters. Thank you guys so much for supporting me and helping me to grow this channel. Without your guys' support, I might have given up the channel already because I kind of need to know that people who appreciate information I'm sharing for me to constantly making new videos. And if you are interested in supporting me on Patreon, do know that I have a whole list of Patreon-only videos where I talk more in-depth on the full fundamental forces and how it can be applied to various internal martial arts. Currently, we are going through each practice and see how the full fundamental forces are seen in each of its individual practice. So definitely consider checking them out and consider supporting me on Patreon if you're interested in that kind of content. The last thing I'd like to remind everyone that we are still in the pandemic, so wear your mask, sanitize your hand, social distance if you can, stay safe and stay healthy, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching TriEssence Martial Arts channel.